Year of the Mecha isn't gonna stop just because I caught a fucking cold. It's gonna be a bit on the shorter side of things just for the sake of, like, my sinuses, but, I mean, whatever. The worst symptoms were, like, on Monday already. I've been on the mend. It's still kind of annoying. Coolguy's here, though.
Yo, we were just talking in the lobby before we hop on about this one, and the consensus appears to be that this is a weird one.
Yeah. Yeah, Armored Core Nexus. Where do we even fucking begin?
I mean, like talking to you really helped me focus my thoughts, and I think the way I'll sum it up for the chat is the way the thing I came up with, like in our waiting room right before. It kind of feels very much um like the XCOM Chimera Squad of the series, because like it's part of the third generation. It's part of everything that they were doing in there, but it feels like they were trying to do some experiments inside of the established formula they have, and some experiments worked, some experiments didn't. That's expected of experiments. But the primary thing that confused me then, and still confuses me to this day, is that it's not really presented like a series of experiments. Like Firaxis did a very good job of communicating well ahead of time. It's just like, look, guys, this is an XCOM 3. And and we're messing around with some stuff. We hope you guys have some fun with it.
Yeah.
And then Nexus comes out, and they're just like, hey, here's another Armored Core game. And even the game itself sort of presents itself like this is the next grand chapter in what's going on. And it's just like, it's not. It's
Yeah.
not a grand chapter. Like,
Yeah.
even the story is like smaller scale.
Yeah, Nexus is like the extra context as well to think about, like, where this game comes in is that this is the Armored Core game that had to come out after Silent Line.
Yeah,
We had already established when we did that particular stream, kind of showing like just how like bigger in scope and more detail like the missions were, like the stakes that were in play for the story, the insanely huge amount of parts, everything that just made it seem like if the series was supposed it had to end for whatever reason, that would have been the best note to go out on. But obviously it was going to continue, so they were like, what the fuck are we going to do? And this is and this is basically the game where, like, depending on who you ask, Armored Core fans in the community, like it's generally agreed upon that, yeah, like, people will talk about the series in terms of generations, like, almost like it's how people talk about Pokemon in the same way. But depending on who you ask, they'll either lump in Nexus and the remaining PS2 games in Gen 3 by itself, or they'll give it the distinction of being Gen 3.5. Because this is where a lot of, like, huge sweeping changes to mechanics came into play, to the point that it is not possible at all to transfer, like, your save data from Silent Line into this game. This is effectively like a clean break, much like you would have if this were a new number title. Except there's no number on this game. It's just Armored Core Nexus.
And like you don't necessarily need numbers or whatever, but like they do provide a useful signal for a lot of folks, just basically being like, okay, like they're remaking the rules on this one. And
Yeah.
Nexus is just like we're remaking something.
Yeah, yeah, and even with the menu, as you saw briefly, it was Armored Core Nexus Evolution. This is like, Evolution refers to disc 1 of this game. That's a whole other thing, but, like, I'll save that for the very end, because most of the focus I want to keep on the Evolution disc, because that's where the new content is. But most importantly, to start, the first of the major changes that this game brought about to the series. New configuration using the analog sticks. They fucking did it, boys. It only took them 8 games, but we got it.
We did it, Reddit.
Yes, dual analog controls, so you can play it like your shooter games. But
and
you
also,
can still...
you can move your AC a lot closer to how it's shown in that intro sequence, where
Yeah.
ACs are just basically bopping and rocking and chomping that meat.
Yeah, I mean, you still could with like the older control scheme, but it obviously took a lot more practice to get it. This is naturally like a more intuitive like way to get that point across.
Right.
But and here's the thing though, like especially because I'm, even as someone that has played through all these games and has been perfectly fine with like how the limited controls in the previous 7 games were, like I won't lie. I like the dual analog controls more, but it's not for the immediate reason as people would think it would be, which is, oh, you can use the left stick to move and the right stick to aim, just like it's like in a shooter. But like no, the real reason is because by moving what were essentially like 8 discrete digital inputs for movement and aiming to analog sticks, you now basically have, not counting the D-pad, because in this mode the D-pad doesn't get used for anything, you now have basically 6 freed up additional inputs, 4 on the face buttons and 2 for like clicking in the left analog sticks, which means suddenly inside weapons, which you originally would have had to like switch to manually like all your other weapons, they now have their own button. And the command for disarming your weapons or other attachments when they've run out of uses is now simplified, because before you had to hold all 4 shoulder buttons and then press the button corresponding to it. Here, you can just have a single dedicated button that you hold down and then you press the button relating to that weapon or extension and it drops it easy.
Yep.
It is... like, that is the real benefit of the new control type. And you can see here, this is basically and even with like how these controls are set up, I still end up remapping a lot of them, because because you would think with left or right weapons, it's like, oh yeah, why wouldn't you just leave those on left and right triggers? Except there's the matter of you still use the boost button a lot. And with how I use weapons in Nexus, what happens is that I prefer to like use both of my right fingers on R1 and R2 to just hold down both weapon fire at the same time, and then just leave like my left hand entirely for handling movement inputs like boosting. So what you see here is now that's pretty much like what the inputs are that I use with like the Type A control scheme. Okay, and yeah, I'm not even going to register a name for this because I'm only starting a new game just to show, just the opening cinematic for this. So was that descriptive enough for you? No? Too
Yeah.
bad. Like all you really need to know in relation to like where this fits kind of with like the plot up to this point from the previous games is that this is obviously X amount of years after the events of Silent Line. That conflict is over, and humans have basically all fully moved back up to the surface now. And
Especially
corporations are still doing their same old bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, especially since you're still cast as a Raven, none of that crap matters. That was yesterday. There's a new fight today. Let's move on.
Yeah, like like Hasia, you brought up, like that wasn't the bomber at the end of the last game. No, because I mean, like obviously, like the main thing with that was, yeah, and unfortunately for whatever reason I can't bring up the load menu right here. So
Womp womp.
Yeah, please save when prompted. Which, fine, I'll just make like a... No, actually, I'll just like make it like a...
Please save
like
when prompted. Just, I'm sorry. Just friggin' how far we've come as a race. People telling you hey, please save often, versus when you see this symbol, you're being saved. Do not resist.
Yeah. It's so fucking weird how this game handles like its save load setup. The fact that like I don't know what they were trying to do. It feels like the most half-assed measure to try and prevent save scumming, but it doesn't do anything. It just makes it more inconvenient for you to have to like load back up your previous save.
I'm still not entirely okay. Are we doing it? Are we making it happen? We're making it happen. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was still not entirely like. It's been a million years since I played this game, and I didn't play it for very long, even when I did, because you know, like I said in the intro, it's kind of a weird game.
Yeah.
So like even looking at it with some base level of familiarity, I was so incredibly confused as to what the hell it wanted you to do.
Yeah, because the idea is that apparently how the game phrases it is that like you can save. Like, there's, like, a save command, like, in the options menu, but the problem with that is that, like, it says that it only saves partial data, and to only, like, permanently save your data, whatever that means, because I've not seen a quantifiable difference, is that you have to exit back to the main menu that way. It makes no sense.
Like, thinking from a programming perspective, I can kind of understand maybe what they're talking about, but it's all guesses.
Yeah,
like there's a difference between making a full save and making a delta save, right? All right. Oh, I'm only saving what's changed since the last time you saved. Making a delta save is a lot smaller. It's a lot quicker. Blah 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 blah. But obviously, you know, if any single one of those things, either the original or the delta, gets damaged, then you're just completely fucked.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to make a full save every so often, just so you're more reliable. But like, I've got no information on whether or not that's actually what it's doing.
Yeah, but right now, I guess I'm going to go into the missions, but I can quickly cover at least as we're playing through it, like what all has been added or changed in regards to the AC customization, because obviously that's the one of, if not the biggest draw of the series, you know, customizing your giant robot. So all like the same like major parts that had been introduced in generations up to this point are still in effect. Their implementation in some cases is actually a bit different. There's a new third type of core in addition to overboost and exceed orbit cores called Hanger. And what those do is that using select types of weapons that are of a certain size, you can basically bring in backup weapons that will replace like the ones in your main arm if you disengage them. So if you want to bring in like basically like 4 machine guns, you could do that. And in fact, from my perspective, that's actually kind of the most viable build to use in almost every single mission in this game.
A lot of missions here end up lasting a lot longer, so the endurance that you're talking about ends up being a lot more relevant than in many previous games.
Some are longer, most are honestly really short, but the other major change I do want to bring up that's important is a big change to the heat mechanic. Most importantly, I want you to pay attention to the Celsius gauge right below, like, my HP.
Sure.
You see that number?
There. Yeah.
It's going up even though I'm boosting.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I feel like it did that in Silent Line, but nearly not, like, nowhere near to that level.
Yeah.
Like 20 to 120 C is about what you would expect for normal running from your AC. But boosting around now, you're going up to like 250 C.
Yeah, because that's I only show that specifically because when I was loading up my save to get things prepared for this, I remembered that this was basically the build that I had designed as close to what I had been using by the end of Silent Line, and it kind of just to highlight how the changes to the heat mechanic makes that sort of energy-based build like so much harder to do well. Because how heating is changed is simple. Before, what happens with heating in Armored Core when it was originally introduced is that meter would go up every time you were in a environment with a very hot ambient temperature, or if you were taking damage, because explosions from hits produces heat. And if it hit a certain threshold, hey Arian, how's it going? Yeah, going over more Armored Core, but yeah, basically, if your heat meter hit a certain threshold, it would then start going back down as you took rapid tick damage to your AP. It was basically like the equivalent of, say, if you got poisoned in a Souls game or something, to use a modern example. Here, in a change where, on paper, I think the idea behind it is more admirable than what they originally had when they introduced this in AC2, when you overheat, your generator starts to basically go into overdrive as it is trying to cool itself off, which results in your energy depleting much faster than normal, and you only start to take the rapid tick damage to your AP if there is no more energy for you to pull from. Because the idea now is more explicitly every part of your AC produces heat, which places even more importance on the likes of your radiator. So that sort of generator-radiator combo becomes even more important. There is, however,
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a more logical approach, which I do like, again, on paper, when it comes to this particular entry, because I'll at least go out ahead and say it, that this is a feature, this was a gameplay change that when they introduced it here was massively overtuned, but they finally got it to a nice sweet spot when Last Raven rolled around. But that's 2 games after this. Right, yeah, this is also something that is sort of a sign of the time. Now that you've mentioned it, I do remember that they had been talking about trying to do something more, something like that for a while, but they had a lot of trouble getting it dialed in correctly, and this wasn't at a time where you could just release a patch and say, okay, well we've tuned it a little bit more. Everybody give it a shot. Yeah, this was for PS2. That's what the yearly releases the games were for.
Yeah, you had a 1-year turnaround on balancing changes, which is just that boggles my mind as a game developer nowadays.
Yeah, it's just insane to think about. And this is a simple mission, obviously, where it's just we went into the storehouse and we just got to blow up everything inside within the time limit that we have to work with. There is it is possible to obviously destroy it all, if you're quick enough, but that means because these are boxes and not enemies that are producing a heat signature, your only way to destroy them is entirely with manual aim. But this is the sort of thing where, like, this type of mission, it's oddly, like, PS1 Armored Core reminiscent, which I think is, like, a running theme a lot with how the mission design feels in this game compared to what they had in Last Raven, where it's, like, kind of a step back.
Yeah, the manual aiming feels less onerous here than it used to, but it's still manual aiming, and like it's still onerous insofar as that's not something that Armored Core has traditionally been about. But you know, like I don't mess with them for trying, but it's very much touching the third rail because like. I do remember when I originally picked up this game, and it was making it very obvious that there were situations like this where I was going to need to manually aim and do all of that stuff. It felt very much like the first time that I played Doom with mouse look because if you're super old, you might remember that Doom 1 actually didn't launch with mouse look, and you know, let alone the like Wolfenstein 3D, which was basically pre-Doom, right?
Yeah.
So you're walking around with these frickin' like keyboard tank controls, and the way you used to aim up and down was like home and end on your keyboard, and you rarely had to use it because Doom Guy would automatically, you know, aim up to a certain tolerance, and then like within a year of it originally coming out, they released the mouse look patches because Carmack was just totally obsessed with it, and it was it was an absolutely new game.
Yeah.
It was an absolutely new game.
Although you say Doom, and it's like I think even then, like there was no looking down on the engine. I think they only had looking up and down when it came time for Quake, which is then when like mouse look became like more of a thing afterwards, when people started to realize that just keyboard only wasn't doing it anymore.
Yeah, like you were able to look around and do mouse aiming and so forth, but yes, like vertical aiming on that engine simply doesn't work to some after certain tolerances.
Yeah.
But you know, like they more or less worked within those tolerances and made it so, you know, 95% of the time you didn't notice, that's basically game design.txt. Like your engine always has ridiculous limitations, and your goal as a designer is just to paper over that and give a good experience and hope so people don't notice.
Yeah. So I want to give some special shout outs to this mission, because for as simplistic and kind of dull a lot of the missions are in Nexus, one thing I do appreciate that they tried to do in a lot of cases was to have, like, acknowledge the idea that there are some missions that you probably aren't going to be successful and complete, but still have the game move forward anyway. And this is one of them, because win or lose, the mission completes anyway, and you get like a different end cutscene. Like you're here like in this like domed city, having to deal with special forces that are trying to take it over during a blackout. Normally, with a build not as good as mine, you would get trounced on, and then like another Raven comes in to save you while like taking care of like the remaining reinforcements. Here, you hold your own. He comes in anyway and takes out the stragglers that are trying to retreat, and you still get you know, if you win, you still get the full like mission like money reward. Whereas if this dude comes in to save your ass, you don't get the money, but you at least live to fight another day.
Right. That in general is a kind of storytelling conceit that I wish a lot more games did, simply because like the meme is failure is not an option.
Yeah.
But like I'm telling you right here and now, failure is always an option.
Yeah.
Failure happens a lot.
It really does. Yeah. Yeah. And because of that sort of trying to design these missions in a way where failing them still counts as a form of progress, there are actually some missions that in order to get them like on the free mission list, which obviously I have all of them, there are some where you only get, like you can see here, eliminate base attackers. There are 2 of them. The idea is that one of them is like the initial version of that mission, that if you somehow failed that, you know, it would boot you back here. And if this was like, say, the PS1 Armored Core games, you would inexplicably be repeating the exact same mission you just failed again in order to proceed forward. But instead, you get like an alternate version that is basically going, okay, the first approach didn't work, try doing it this way, you know, something like that. Like there's one like that takes place in a canyon that I think I remember being like a good example of that. I don't know if this is Kisaragi forces that you have to destroy or not. This is the no, well that's kind of a similar one, but I don't like it because it takes place over a body of water and I'm not that well equipped to deal with it.
Well, like Paseo, I also want to draw the distinction between acceptable failure and forced failure, the way that you're talking about it, right? Like if you win, great, wonderful, that's fine. You move forward. If you lose, also fine. You still move forward. It's just a different context. More recently, Street Fighter 6 does a lot of this stuff. You know, but like most of the fights in Street Fighter 6 that are forced by the game, they don't give a crap if you lose. Most of them, there are a few that they really want you to win, but you know, like a good, I'd probably say 75% of the main story questline battles, you can just get your teeth kicked in, and nobody cares. Like the story still moves forward. There's no loss of rewards really. Like you get less XP in Zenny or whatever, but who cares? Like that's everywhere. It's not like you lose out on irreplaceable stuff, which again is kind of the same thing that Ark was just talking about. Like, okay, you need to get bailed out by your homeboy there. All right, what do you lose? The payout? Fine, brother. Like,
yeah,
go do another mission. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, especially with that Street Fighter 6 example with like World Tour, that makes a whole lot of sense because it's like I've not like seen playthroughs of it like in full, obviously, but like I could tell with, you know, how there are obviously people that have played Street Fighter, you know, just like the traditional way, that they'd be like, yeah, they would have no problem probably just like chumping on like a lot of those AI fights where you're clearly outclassed because they have the skill and fundamentals.
Yeah,
you know? But that's like a bonus for them, you know? It's not something that's expected for everyone, and that's fine.
It's all pride. Like it's all about like for bragging rights and pride, which, you know, at the end of the day, that's all Street Fighter is, anyways. You know, it's a fighting game that is desperately trying to reinvent itself in an era where better control schemes exist, and a good like half of its base is just like never wants anything to change because they've already spent 1,000 years of calibrating their reflexes for this thing that's there right now. So, you know, like they're very clearly trying to appeal to a new generation of folks with 6. And you know, as somebody who was one of those older fans and just like fell off because I didn't have the time or the patience to continually recalibrate every time there was a new Street Fighter. I think they've done a great job. Oh, buddy.
Yeah.
You scared the pee out of me right there.
Yeah, unfortunately, I fucked up still. That was my first mistake. I should have dealt with I should have dealt with the snipers on the other track. But this is what I was talking about, like this particular canyon level. There's like a lot of like missions that actually take place in this one environment, and as far as like just a place where if you got like the right AC build for flying around and whatnot, I do enjoy going through it a lot. But oh yeah, but it's real nasty, especially with just how the new heat system works in conjunction with the energy limitations, because I feel like that was supposed to
You
be
also had
like
no freaking room to dodge. Like, not really.
Yeah.
like the who's his faces, your AC's mobility is generally much better in this game versus a lot of the previous ones, which gives them all the excuse that they need to make things like those turrets even more accurate than ever. Like, you have to be moving, like, constantly.
Yeah.
And when you're fighting on a bridge over an abyss, that carries its own pack of problems.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing where, like, it's a feature that's been part of, like, the aiming in Armored Core that has been a thing since the PS2 game started, called the double lock, which is kind of one of those unspoken of hidden features that adds a lot of nuance to the way, like, range combat works in the game, where if you lock onto an enemy, your aim window is over them, but you don't immediately fire, behind the scenes, your targeting will update itself so that instead of firing at the last known position, it will instead fire at their expected position as they move. And like, this applies as much to, like, your aiming as it does the enemy. So you can, like, if you know when and where they're going to attack, you do very subtle movements to throw things off.
This is which is also very much a staple of a lot of games. Mountain Blade has done that since the beginning. It became most notable with Warband. But if you want to solo like a million frickin' bandits, which a lot of people, if they end up messing with Mountain Blade long enough, end up going that route because it's the quickest way to level up. But if you want to do that, like, you have to get familiar with the fact that enemies fire at where they expect you to be, and they are like, they're subject to skill variances as much as you. So, like, they will always laser target exactly where they expect you to be, but they have a big spread on their attacks the same way you do. So, like, if you are paying attention to when they're about to fire, you can just turn around right as they're about to fire and guarantee that they're going to miss, no matter how skilled they are.
Keep moving. The area is secure.
Those things are weird.
Yeah, a little bit.
Totally not going to be anything important in this already, like, thin on plot game.
Don't worry about it.
Head back to the surface.
Yeah, like,
Especially
unmanned suicide weapons.
Yeah, and how chatty your operator is going to be. All of the other missions we've shown off so far, your operator can barely be bothered to talk you into the mission, let alone give you instructions while you're there.
Yeah, because, like, that's the thing is, like, traditionally how, like, when you go to select a mission, you're generally treated to, like, a 3-page, on average, like, briefing or something from, like, the client. But when you select a mission, it just gives you, like, the cliff notes of, like, here's the location, here are the targets, here's your payout, go do it. Like, if you want actual more information, you have to go to, like, the section that has all, like, the news articles and email that you receive, and that's where you actually get the story, which, I guess, to give an overview of, like, what is going on in this game that is not as apparent from just playing it normally. There's a new corporation introduced in here. There's a new kid on the block, and he's got something that the other corporations don't, and they don't like it.
Everybody's just like, let's steal his lunch money.
More or less, yeah. They basically got, like, a stronghold on, like, a new resource in this general region that all the other corporations don't, and they're now trying to, like, basically get a hold of it by any means necessary. What that particular resource is, however, is never named. It is never explained what it does, and frankly, what it does or what it is doesn't matter, because that's not what the point of the story is, for what little there is. The point of it is more to show just, less so, I guess, like the damaging effects that the corporation's actions have on others, but more like what sort of damaging effects it has on themselves. Like the toll that it has for when a corporation decides it's going to adopt like a new business strategy, expecting huge benefits and profits, but it doesn't give them that. This is a story. This is a story where every corporation involved in the events around this game comes out of it for the worst.
Okay, so yeah, we're basically talking about all of the megacorps of Silent Line getting really into NFTs. There we go. We've explained it.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and this is basically like an email from like near the end of the game, because I had to make a save right before the final mission in order to get this to really come across properly. This is basically like the summary explaining what goes on. So like the main, out of the 3 corporations that have the biggest beef with the new kid on the block, Navis, Mirage basically like took this challenge the hardest, and it's like they even got as far as to take possession of the mine where this resource comes from, but it was just like too many losses for it to have ever been considered an actual like success. So they're just calling off all future operations in this area.
Nope, screw it, we're done.
Yeah, and even Navis, as much as they tried to pick a fight with everyone, because they have such a smaller share than everyone, even Kisaragi, they are basically like on their death throes. They're basically like on the edge of bankruptcy and just absolving completely. Crest is an interesting one because also during this time period, you start to see that there are now Ravens that aren't just affiliated with like a with like an intermediary service like, you know, like Global Cortex in the previous games, or Ravenzark as it's called now. There are some that are now directly on corporation payroll. And because of the clusterfuck of this particular conflict, some of the Ravens on Crest payroll specifically started to have a bit of internal fighting with the corporation itself, and that kind of caused like things to tear apart from within.
Extremely normal. Super normal.
Yeah. And Kisaragi, they had their own internal power struggle, but not to the same like degree that Crest did, and they're still kind of like. Even back in Silent Line and the AC3, compared to how much like Crest and Mirage were beating with each other, Kisaragi was always the distant third that was like, I am going to try and find my way to pull ahead out of these ahead of these two without explicitly stepping on their toes, if I can. Like that.
I always kind of felt like Kisaragi was supposed to be the Nintendo analog there.
Yeah.
Because if you ignore the size. The size argument, like Nintendo's basically idea during the later stage of the console wars, and you know, even going on today, is like screw all of this like fighting over latest gen, all of this other garbage. We're going to do some more experimental things to attempt to find new horizons to exploit, as it were.
Yeah, Hasia's got the right idea. Kisaragi subscribes to the Blue Ocean strategy.
Yeah.
And talking about what I was mentioning earlier about Crest having like their own stable of ACs that were unhappy with the situation that it caused an internal power struggle. This is one of the late game missions where you're basically tasked by Crest themselves to deal with their number 1 hired AC, who's just no longer cooperative. And this is actually the dude that saves you in the earlier mission where you're having to deal with the special forces, the one where you have a different cutscene based on success or failure.
Right. Music is going hard.
Yeah. Yeah, music in this game goes way harder on the techno compared to 3 and Silent Line, where it was more of a synth orchestra.
Right.
Also, he's a human plus asshole who can fire a grenade launcher from the back while flying.
Your God. Beat me if you can. All right, man.
I'm doing a pretty bad job as well with...
Homeboy has unerring aim. Yeah. Basically, I'm no like what I was talking about earlier. It ends up being pretty reasonable insofar as like to avoid that grenade launcher.
Yeah.
I noticed that you would change direction within like a second of him firing. So like you more or less need to learn his rhythm and then just change a direction. Like around the same time he fires, or he's just gonna hit you every single time.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, and I do feel kind of bad that in my practice run I had no problem beating him the first time, but whatever. I'll blame it on I'm still dealing with like kind of a stuffed up nose from earlier in the week.
I believe it.
Yeah, but that particular AC like he's tough, obviously, and even when he's talking about like. He's one of the few characters in this game where, like, when you hear him speak, he's, like, has, like, a more foreboding tone to what he talks about because, you know, he's on Crest's payroll for, like, the majority of the game, but the thing is that he seems to realize part of the reason that kind of fueled the power struggle within Crest and, like basically, like, a coup from within started by these Ravens is because they kind of realize that what's going on here is getting dangerously close to repeating history. And we kind of know how cyclical a lot of Armored Core is overall with its very cynical outlook on mankind's nature.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a very frickin' FromSoft story still. This is one of the problems that I have with FromSoft writing as a whole, precisely because they have pretty much only one note that they string over and over when it relates to, you know, people, civilization, their actions, blah 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 blah. It becomes very predictable and very what's the word I'm looking for?
Cliche.
Numbing. Well, numbing. Like you get numb to it. It's just like even your mentor, your savior, there was saying. Power is all that matters now. It's like all right, calm down there, Hitler, and like you might go into some impassioned view of or review of, you know, all of the reasons why he says that and how he's backed into a corner and blah blah blah, and it's just like, okay, that's great. I already saw that. I saw that in. Even friggin' Kingsfield has a lot of that sort of DNA. It's just like throw a pie at some point, man. Like just throw a banana cream pie at somebody's face. Make me laugh and actually care about the people that I'm seeing. Because otherwise, I'm just gonna be like, like, I know for a fact that you're going to betray me, or I'm otherwise going to have to kill you. So I am explicitly choosing right now not to give a shit about who's in front of me because it'll just make it easier to pull a trigger later.
Yeah, it's like I don't have nearly the same amount of problems with it in Armored Core compared to, say, you know, how it obviously is with, you know, From's games today with like Dark Souls onward, and I think a lot of that is still entirely because of I have like the kind of like the full picture of how it's done throughout 3rd gen, and the fact that parts of it are kind of, you know, it starts out as a sort of reimagining of where Armored Core 1 started, goes in a different direction thinking it's going to subvert you before kind of swinging back in the other way to kind of show that things are going to get even worse than how it did in previous generations. Whereas, yeah, like I totally get the same numbing feeling every time I look at kind of like the whole plot setup that goes into like Souls games, because it's always about like some decaying status quo, and especially in Souls games case, you always having a choice of endings, whether it's to preserve that decaying status quo or to take it into your own hands, either for good or more often than not just to fuel your own greed and lust for power.
I mean, or yeah, like it's less of a problem in Armored Core specifically, as well, simply because the story isn't really the point. Outside of the news reports and the emails and all like that, you simply don't see or have to engage with the the story nearly so much in Armored Core games. Like this is like third generation is kind of the highlight of the series, and even then, just sort of like, you can read this if you want, like it's not that big of a deal. Versus something like Dark Souls, even if you are like clicking buttons really quickly past people talking about it, there's a absolutely massive amount of visual storytelling that from clearly put just absolutely admirable amount of effort into. And just walking around, you're going to be like, oh hey, I remember that guy. They're dead now, or oh hey, that guy gave me something. I barely remember what, but they were definitely cool to me, 3 hours ago. They're attacking me now, and there's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah. So one thing I do want to get into as well to wrap up like one more aspect of the story before I show off the final mission. This goes back to the matter of how corporations in Nexus, they are now at a point where they even have like their own private stable of ravens that are like directly on the payroll. And, that's obviously a bit different from how ravens are traditionally like in the Armored Core games before this, where if you're a Raven, you're part of the Raven's Nest or similar affiliate program where you're the intermediary, like you are a mercenary by the strictest definition, not affiliated with anyone else. And that leads to like a subplot involving this person right here, Jacko, and another person that's not on this ranking list, unfortunately, because he got booted the fuck out, named Evangel. There are two characters that aren't as important in this game, but in Last Raven, they basically get ascended to like big player status, as it were. Because Evangel is, he pilots the AC Oracle, who is also the box cover AC of the game. Like the one that you also see in the majority of the, the opening video. Right. And, halfway through the game, you get a notice from the Raven's Ark that he has been expelled from there. He's not allowed to take contracts through them because internal investigations discovered that he was illegally taking like direct contracts from corporations for extra money on the side. Because the idea is that if you're affiliated with the Raven's Ark, that means you have to abide by their rules, and that includes like that you cannot bypass official Raven's Ark channels to get missions you want. If you want to get direct missions from a corporation, you might as well fucking work for them. And apparently that wasn't enough, because as it turns out, Jacko sends out an email like at the 3/4 point of the game to everyone in the Raven's Ark that goes, hey, I did some more investigation. Even though we got rid of Evangel and like these other people that were taking illegal contracts, one of our own executives was facilitating this, like basically allowing it to go through and even taking money off the top. So I have gone in and done a full restructuring of the Raven's Ark to make it more faithful to what it was established for, which, considering what this guy goes on to do in Last Raven, my assumption is that his way of reforming the company was he just went into the boardroom where all the execs were and just shot them in the fucking head.
Would be on message for this game. Yeah. TBH.
Very much so. And the reason I at least bring those up is because they don't factor much. They don't factor at all into the overall corporate war that is going on over this unknown resource. Like, this is entirely a side plot regarding corruption in your own organization, which is supposed to be neutral.
And honestly, it's more interesting than
it
a lot of the other stuff that's going on anyway. They don't ever name the resource. It's always just the resource. Like, all right, man, whatever. The unobtainium exists.
Yeah,
rainbow.
Which, from that perspective, it's like most others would see that as a plot hole, but I still vastly prefer that as the approach, because like the consequences of everyone going crazy trying to get this thing they cannot obtain is like the more important theme behind it.
Yep.
But those character traits regarding Jacko's like brutal pragmatism to preserve like the honor of what it feels to be a raven versus Evangel's like willingness to just like do whatever it takes to get the money he wants is like, if you understand those character traits about them, and then you know exactly what to expect from them when Last Raven rolls around. So this final mission, this is after we get like, you know, the sort of like the update as far as like where all the corporations are in their power struggle, as it were. Mirage has suffered the most losses. Navis is on the verge of bankruptcy. Crest is trying to recover from like a coup within their own forces. But what was Kisaragi doing? They were obviously off doing their own thing, trying to not step on anybody's toes. And, well, this is what they were doing, and they contacted us. Please, you have to stop this thing from activating. We didn't realize that this is another doomsday weapon. Oh god, please help us. And this was after the penultimate mission involved having to destroy a massive MT, as is the series tradition. You gotta have a boss fight with a giant robot that's even bigger than your armored core. And now they're like, we don't know what ramifications this is gonna have on the world, just please shut it down before it fully activates.
We don't know what it's doing, but we're certain it's not good because, you know, we were the ones who were working with it, and also we're stupid. Like, we're really stupid. We tried to get ahead by other means, but unfortunately, like, this is why we should not be poking our heads in places where they don't belong. Fucking outstanding.
And when you have that detail in mind, even when we technically win this mission, it's still not going to go well.
Of course not. Because
there's one more boss in this game, and do not pay attention to like what name the localization gives it, because it is flat out wrong. H-Tech, I think, was just not paying attention. They were only basing this entirely on color scheme when they decided to give this unnamed weapon a name.
Destroy.
That is not 9-ball. That does not even look like 9-ball. It just happens to be red and black.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. That's a mistake. That is a big mistake.
Yeah.
That's not even subtle either. Like that. That's genuinely just we should have done like I'm pretending like I did my homework, but I did not in fact read anything. Whatever, you got him.
Yeah, machine guns, melt them every time. Like I said, the overwhelmingly good, like, best build to go with for missions like this, because of like the real ramifications of the heating change, which it's funny, I keep meaning to actually explain what the ramifications of the change to the heat system is and why that was seen as a bad thing for most people, but we kept getting like,
I mean, it homogenizes everything. That's really the bottom line. It homogenizes these builds because you absolutely need all of your heat and all of your energy for moving. Yeah. So having having projectile weapons that don't use it is huge.
Yeah. Well, like, more importantly, it's like it renders it almost impossible to effectively use energy-based builds. Like, energy weapons and the like are just not good anymore because energy adds a lot of heat.
Right.
But the Amazon delivery drones have now activated. The things we saw briefly in that earlier mission that were like, what the hell are those?
It may be too late.
Yeah, Kisaragi activated a bunch of, like, a swarm of millions of unmanned suicide drones that are all just going to raise the surface.
Sure, why not?
We are living through the Great Destruction Part 2.
It's our way.
Part dude.
Yeah. And we get to play out the sequence of our last stand. the coolest part that this game has.
Objective, survive the Halo Reach moment.
Yeah.
You know, like however many years before Halo Reach.
Pretty much. And this is, we were talking about failure in games. This is obviously forced failure. There is no way to win this.
You don't even get your HUD, right?
Yeah.
Like it's pretty damn clear what's happening here.
Mm-hmm. Just
no
hope.
It even just fades out if you take too long. Amazing.
Yeah, if you take too long, if you get down to 10% AP left. And then roll credits.
Fantastic.
Like after two arguably like positive endings from AC3 and Silent Line both, you know, stuff that had very little ambiguity compared to how any of the PS1 Armored Core games ended, because the destruction of the AI in 1 and 9-Ball and Master of Arena is the sort of thing where it's like yeah, you did this, but like what are the ramifications of this? You kind of destroyed what was the source of order. 3 didn't really give that sense. It was instead fulfilling the last task of the controller, which is it wanted humanity to overcome a crisis big enough that it can reclaim the surface. Mm-hmm. And then it overcame a second crisis of AI trying to basically get them out of the surface. You know, like whether or not they were, like, if they deserved to keep expanding, and reclaiming the Earth. And this is just like, no, these people are still idiots. They'll still repeat the same mistakes of the past.
Everyone's dumb, and also they will get you killed. The end.
Yeah.
No moral.
Yeah, the end. No moral.
Aesop, this ain't.
Oh my god, yeah. It's like, it really is just mind-blowing how it's like, that's, like, that playable sequence of, like, The Last Stand is the coolest thing this game does.
Yeah, like
oh man,
it's. If anything, I feel like that is one of the points where it properly subverts what you're doing and actually does something that's properly depressing.
Yeah.
Simply because like okay, you might have been completely convinced of humanity's failings and the ultimate doom of everything and blah blah blah. But one thing you've been convinced of so far, because you're the player, is that you're going to survive somehow. And then you know, like there's then you basically have this situation where you absolutely cannot win, you cannot survive, and it's just like, all right, well, that's the fade to black, and that feels like a proper gut punch, you know, like that feels really well done. Unfortunately, that's like the only story point that works really well in this particular game.
Yeah, it's the one that works well and is properly conveyed, like, in mission, as it were, because, like, as we kind of established, the missions kind of like rein back the complexity that they were starting to introduce with Silent Line. A lot more of the important details became tied even more to the emails and news logs that you get, and like the extra crazy thing on top of that is that this was only disc 1. What is disc 2? Well, let's just go ahead and, like, I'll boot that up just
pop
to
that
show,
in real quick.
Just show one thing from it, because what the second disc is, dubbed Revolution, is that this is the PS1 Armored Core homage disc.
Oh,
yeah. So, you ever wanted to play through, like, full-on remakes of classic missions from the PS1 Armored Core games? You ever wanted to hear remixes of Armored Core 1 music? You want to unlock bonus parts that are graphically updated versions of parts from the PS1 games, including some parts that weren't even available in the PS1 games. You could do that.
All right, then.
Yeah. And obviously, if you're looking at, you know, Armored Core games from like the perspective of like you want really good mission quality, then it's no surprise that remakes of like some of these PS1 era missions are like by nature so much more interesting than the majority of missions you do on the Evolution disc. But it's a really cool thing. And also even when it came to like the missions on like the main disc, kind of as you briefly saw whenever it got to the income and expense reports after completing a mission, you know, there's no ranking like there was in 3 and Silent Line. They got rid of that, except the Revolution disc still has mission rankings.
It historically did in the PS1 era, so makes sense to me.
Well, no, that's the thing. PS1 games, those did not have the mission rankings.
I could swear they did.
No, it was...
Alright, well...
Yeah, AC3 was when they first introduced it. Nexus, in the main game, for whatever reason, just decided to get rid of it, and I don't know why. But here's the completely different
Sure,
menu.
we'll do that.
One that's reminiscent of literally all the previous games, like this circular menu.
Oopsie.
And it still brings you to the same garage and everything. But like one thing that I do want to highlight in particular, as far as like parts that you can unlock on this disc, some of which are based on AC parts that you couldn't even equip in the PS1 games.
Right.
This core part, the YC07 Cronus, and these particular leg parts, I believe it's this one, yeah, because it matches. These were the core and leg parts used by the villain of the PS1 Armored Core game Project Phantasma called Stinger, who, as I made mention of when I showed that game off on stream months and months ago, in the Japanese version, Stinger, the villain, is voiced by Sho Hayami, voiced by Maximilian Genius himself from Macross.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like there's a familiar name.
Yeah, like, so here's like all, obviously, like the different missions you have that are like, they're all in different categories that have like their own opening narration, as it were. So, but also it's like you get like a remake of missions, you get like extended versions of missions in some cases, and then you have a reverse side to some missions where you play the opposite
struggle.
So how about we do an inversion of what one of the starting missions in Armored Core 1 was, where we had to basically destroy a bunch of workers on strike, and now we're in support of the workers on strike.
The hope was that Chrome would lash out without any consideration.
Also, the briefings on this disc get actual voiceovers instead of the Evolution disc where the new content is. Again, like, it's very baffling the amount of effort they put into each of these discs.
If we just head to the bridge and help the workers accomplish this task, take care not to injure any workers, as this would reflect poorly on our movement.
This would reflect poorly. There's there's a word for it.
Yeah. And also a selection of, like, using, like, the original music track that would have played on the PS1 games, or using a bonus remixed version. So, like, as a send-up to Armored Core's past, like, this is a really cool disc. Like, this is the thing that honestly makes Nexus worth it even more overall than like, the continuing of, like, the main story.
Yeah.
Main system. Engaging combat mode.
So yeah, this is like the yeah, there they are. They got the barricades. They're trying to defend and all that. And instead of being the one basically charging through in this way, we're going the other direction, helping out the little guy.
There we go.
Yeah. And again, like, these missions are ranked, so if you're wanting to go through these with the idea of, like, figuring out, like, if you want the incentive for figuring out the most optimal build to get S ranks, which I will say, getting them all is significantly easier than trying to get them all in 3 or Silent Line, from going from my own personal experience. It's still really, really hard, though.
Yeah, all you just said is that it's possible, because like, particularly in Silent Line, the the problem of all S ranks was give up.
Like, give up because that one last part you need that is tied to all S ranks is never going to be achieved.
So annoying. Like,
Yeah.
it is the most frustrating fucking thing on the planet.
Yeah. And at least to the credit of, at least I think if I recall correctly with this game anyway, I don't think there was a part you unlocked by getting S ranks on every mission. It might have been just something inconsequential, like you unlocked a concept art gallery or some bullshit. But at least and I can at least say in Last Raven as well that there is no reward to getting all S ranks on that either. So it's at least something where it's like, I'm fine with that because it's like, you know, I'm doing it basically just for its own sake at that point.
Yeah, I always thought it was weird to give you parts for all S ranks because I was just like, okay, what do I use this on? There are no more worlds left to conquer, Alexander.
Yeah. I'm gonna do at least just this one more mission since it's like short enough, and it will like give you a demonstration of what I'm talking about with the character Stinger, because this is where he makes his introduction at the end. And it was like, I always really like this just because, again, the character was voiced by Sho Hayami in the Japanese version of the original game, and the fact you finally got to use his parts from this game onward to Last Raven was just so cool.
Engaging combat mode.
So you gotta, as part of this mission, gotta take care of the enemy MTs that are trying to disrupt like this convoy line. You know, simple stuff.
Oh boy, almost DFA'd you there. Like, not sure that one works in Armored Core, but I appreciate the effort.
Yeah. Oh well, what can you do?
I mean, you did what you can do. You could shoot him in the face.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and even you can hear it a bit like in the background as well. Like I selected the original music option, and you can tell that, yeah, this is absolutely just tracks lifted straight from what they used on the PS1.
Yep, maybe remastered a little bit, but I'm not even certain it's like, if it is, it's not done that much because frickin' like, yeah, like I'm hearing a similar level of grunge versus the to like the graphics I'm seeing, because like they didn't bother like putting the graphics into higher resolution or whatever. It's just like whatever, like you know what you're playing.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, like, that's ultimately the thing with like music and digital audio for games, is that like, unlike graphics, it really didn't take long to like really get actual CD quality sound and have that be the norm. The only thing that keeps improving is just like the mixing and bitrate and all that other stuff to ensure that things aren't like horribly compressed.
Yeah, we do a much better job with the recording samples as well. Like what folks call a sound font. Those notes that we use in our sound fonts are just numerous times cleaner than they used to be. But like the waveform space that you have, that hasn't changed. You know, we're better at making sure that crap doesn't clip, but you know, like the actual space we have to work with hasn't changed. And the sound hardware itself has definitely gotten a lot better insofar as, you know, the nuances of sound that it can put out. But you know, like a lot of what you identify as, you know, as grunge from yesteryear is one of two things. It's either just the sound hardware being, you know, worse and not having quite the range that it used to, or the sound samples that it's using being recorded better and more cleanly with better microphones.
Wait, hold on. I think I fucking misremember what that objective was. I was supposed to destroy the convoy or safeguard transport. What the hell? It went through, but yeah, whatever. That You know,
Yeah,
you don't
it
get to
doesn't matter.
see you don't get to see Stinger in PS2 graphics, which is a shame. Whatever.
Womp womp.
But there's also an archive. You can see the opening videos for like all the previous games, which is cool. Yeah, you get like these little episode movies which played whenever you started each episode that has like a particular mission. Illustrations as well, concept art by the man Shoji Kawamori himself.
Mm-hmm.
Promotional posters, and of course, get to listen to soundtrack. Original shaped memory alloys. Yeah. Yeah, this is just like a nice little love letter to people like me that started playing these games like right from the very beginning. Even though I only started my journey of playing through the Armored Core games in order in like 2009, I think. I obviously wasn't playing these games back when they were new, but like the crazy goal I gave myself of I'm going to play every one of these mainline games in order to get to this midway point, it was like this is a feel good.
True story.
It's really neat. Yeah. So that's Nexus. As you can tell, it's obviously like a mixed bag that I don't hate playing, obviously. If I could give this game credit for anything, this was kind of the game that got me to finally get around to experimenting more with other like AC builds that weren't just energy weapons all the time. You know, actually going, oh, you know what? Machine guns are totally fine to use.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it up.
More DACA, as they say. But, oh god, and even then, it's like, that reminds me, like, the last thing that was, like, one of those weird minor changes that Nexus introduced that, unfortunately, I'd say had the biggest ramifications on the rest of the series after this, was how the payouts, like, worked, like, income and expenses, is that mission payouts with this game, as you might have noticed from, like, the reward, like, the monetary reward for them, so much bigger out the gate than they were in previous games, even in Silent Line. And because of that, combined with the need to just forego energy weapons entirely, despite the fact that energy weapons, like, their ammo is reusable, so you don't have to pay expenses on that. Suddenly, it's like, I'm just getting more money on average, even with expending a shit ton of bullets. So there's no longer... This was the game in the series where the risk of going into debt was no longer a thing.
Right. Yeah. Like even if you started to get close, you would just do like 2 really, really easy missions, and it's just like, all right, I'm fine again.
Yeah. It was, and it's kind of a shame in that regard. Like, actually having to manage that income side of thing was really one of the more interesting aspects of Armored Core, and with like definitely the thing that I think ultimately, even more than a letter rank on a mission, was the better motivator to get you to play well.
Yep.
But that's it for that game. It's still important to play, if only so it was still important for me to play, if only so I could get the complete save data for this necessary to transfer into the games following after this, which 2 weeks from now will return to Armored Core with Ninebreaker, arguably the most filler game possible, even more than this. But whatever, I'm still a junkie for the specifics of classic Armored Core gameplay, that I look at Ninebreaker and I'm like, yeah, I'll totally play an Armored Core game that is just a training mode for the series. It needs it. People need to fucking learn how to play this shit. But that'll be a short one, even shorter than this one ultimately will be. But look forward to the meantime, in between then, next Saturday, Tetsujin 28. That's the next Mecha game. Want to see the granddaddy of giant robots? Yeah, you're gonna be in for a treat. But Coolguy, thanks again for being on. Obviously, even with my recovery from a cold and the fact that I know that you were kind of unsure, like how you were feeling.
Yeah, no, I'm not like
physical
I'm not 100% today either. But delighted to have been here. Appreciate you having me on. But yeah, I'll probably go. I'll probably go grab a nap or something right after this. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie.
You do that, you deserve it. I'll probably need one as well on my end. But,
all right,
yeah.
y'all take good care of yourselves. We'll see you. We'll see you soon.
Have a good rest of your weekend. Take care.
Game over.